Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, and I'd like to welcome Rob Kalwarowsky to the Human Side of Business podcast. How are you doing today, Rob?
Amazing. Thanks for having me, Angie. And I'm pumped to be here. It's going to be fun.
I think so too. So everyone, wanting to introduce Rob, he's on a mission to spread the message of people-centric leadership and the importance of mental health worldwide. Rob envisions a world where happiness, inclusion, psychological safety, and engagement are commonplace in the workplace. He is a fearless organization practitioner and elite high-performance leadership coach. Before transitioning into leadership, Rob spent over 10 years as an engineer within mining, oil, pipelines, and consulting in heavy industry. He's also the co-host of the Leadership Launchpad Project and Dismantling the High Performance Narrative podcast, and also the founder of Maintenance Disrupted. Woo, that's a tongue twister. Before starting his career, Rob graduated from MIT, so Massachusetts Institute of Technology, with his Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering, as well as a minor in management. He was a 3-time academic All-American in NCAA water polo and played on the U18 Canadian national water polo team. Warm welcome. Here we go.
Here we go.
So, Rob, you came on the show today to talk a little bit about navigating difficult dynamics in the workplace. So before we go there, help us understand when you're talking about elite high performance coaching, what does that mean? Just so that we can kind of get the context of where you're jumping in from.
Yeah. So at Elite High Performance, we do a lot of leadership mindset coaching. And the reason we do the deep mindset work with our clients is we're wanting folks to sustain behavioral change and increase their impact basically in ways that they probably may have never thought of. And so Harvard Business Review has a stat that organizations spend it's like $356 billion a year on leadership coaching, and only 25% of it is effective because it addresses the leaders' mindsets. And that's the difference between, hey, I did a workshop for 4 days and on Monday I forgot what I talked about, to like sustaining change over your career and then that leading you to higher levels of success, but also greater impact, and creating those workplaces where you're incorporating the elements that the highest performing teams in the world use, like psych safety, trust, feedback, inspirational leadership, like all those elements that really, like, we're talking everything from, like the Golden State Warriors to, teams at like Google and incredible startups use. So we incorporate it all.
That's fantastic. One-stop shopping, especially when it comes to bridging that knowledge to action, when it comes to leadership and behavioral skills in the workplace. It's fantastic. And it's right up our alley at Intuitive Performance as well. Rob, help us understand, what is your background experience when it comes to navigating those difficult dynamics?
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned it, Angie, right? And it's like I was an engineer from MIT. I went into engineering because I thought, this is going to be my career, right? And in my first job in mining, I had a bad boss. He was passive aggressive. He would constantly say things like, he would basically denigrate my work, saying like, well, we always did it this way, so this way that you're trying to propose isn't going to work, or it's not right. Um, and I often thought, and like for me, I was this guy from MIT. I did a lot of data analysis, like very scientifically minded. And I was like, no, the data says this. Why are you denying reality? And then the other side of it was I often started thinking like, you hired me knowing that this is like my core things I'm good at. And now you're saying you don't want my work, which means you don't want me. And that's a slippery slope. So I started going like questioning my choices at work. And then it was like questioning my choices at home and whether my life has purpose. And then whether I as a person even should exist on this planet. And it kind of comes down to this path. And like ultimately I had depression, which I didn't realize for a long time. And then I had a suicide attempt in 2013 that led really from working in this toxic environment. And here's the part that I always want folks to realize. The morning after I woke up and found myself still alive, and I went to work, and consciously I knew my job is killing me. My boss is killing me. I can't do this. And yet I didn't have the mindset or the ability to choose to leave that job. There was no moment where it's like, oh, you hit rock bottom, you move to the beach, or, like these type of things. It's like my core identity, and this was cultivated since I was a child, was like, you deliver. You're a guy who works hard. You're a guy who does things. And then I started having these questions like, well, who would I be if I didn't have a job? Who would I be if I didn't make any money? And like, I'll give this example is like, I'm sure everyone that is listening to this has had a period either between jobs or like you got laid off and, you have a couple of months or whatever's happened. And you're in that period where you're not working and folks go, what do you do? And you're like, it feels weird. And it feels uncomfortable and you don't know what to say and you don't want to say you're unemployed, but you don't really, right?
Right. So we come up with these buzzwords like, I'm navigating new prospects or trying out different careers, or we come up with all these things so that we can still sound like an A player, because oftentimes the spaces aren't safe to really be ourselves.
Exactly. Right. But ultimately we feel like we're not good enough or we're not
I hear you.
doing something is wrong. Right. And that's the part where the mindset and like all this work I've done since then has really helped me now where I coach folks now in leadership is like, if you have a bad boss or you want to get to the next level of leadership, one is understanding what are the beliefs that are running in your mind. And so if your core identity is, and this is super common, right? People pleasers, hyperachievers, people who judge others very harshly, people who will just continuously work until, they're just exhausted every day, or they're just working weekends and nights and all the time. Like all these things are things that your brain has learned basically when you're a child, but they run on autopilot now as an adult. And it's time to update a lot of those beliefs because they're preventing you from taking that step to the next level.
Absolutely. And I just want to pause for a second, Rob, because you so gracefully have identified your story from a place of candor and vulnerability and rawness all the way up to, giving insights as to how you were in a position to reframe your beliefs. And I want to also take a step back and acknowledge the fact that, it's not easy waking up and feeling stuck. And it doesn't matter if you're working, it doesn't matter if it's a relationship, personal, professional, otherwise. And I can really appreciate how honest you are coming at this, like, the next day I woke up and I went back to work. Like, those words moved me in such a way, like it really hit me in between the eyes, Rob, because one thing as adults that we do not take time spending on, which we should, is our belief system. And I don't have the same type of example that you do, but as a coach, when you go into those practices and you get your certifications, I've used this story a few times in the past, but it's true in the sense that from an academia perspective, I've always breezed through, right? In the sense of being able to pick up core concepts and relate to them and being able to project what they are, remember what they are, etc. But in coaching, it humbles you. It really does, because it forces you, to your point, to think about, what are my old beliefs? Are they serving me? And what type of new beliefs do I have to adopt to increase my performance? If I'm a leader, for example. And so just unpacking that a little bit further, Rob, when you're starting to look at these types of situations, what was it for you that turned on the light bulb that you had to challenge your beliefs? Because I find oftentimes with clients, it's the self-awareness piece that really kind of comes up and bites them as an epiphany, which is amazing. And I get goosebumps and I get so excited about it every single time. But I'd like to hear from you in the sense of, was there any one moment that it was kind of like, okay, I need to do something different here?
Yeah. And so here's the thing, right? These beliefs that we have are hidden from our view.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they're hidden is because our brains find it extremely unsafe to go and find them, right? However, the other side of it is 95% of your decisions you make every day are subconscious. And so you're making decisions based on your belief systems that you don't even realize, that are either pushing you towards your goals of becoming whoever you want to become, or holding you back from achieving those goals that you think you want to get, but your brain feels is unsafe. So let me give you an example. I did a TED Talk about 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was never this thing that I was even dreamed of doing, but as I started to look at myself and look at like the impact I want to have and the legacy I want to leave, it started being like, I want to do talks for folks and I want to share my story and I want to help folks, learn. Basically the talk was, I wish I would have, it was for me. Half of the talk was like for me when I was 24, when I needed to hear this.
Amazing.
And I didn't have it. Right. But it's like, these beliefs are hidden, and the way into understanding them is through our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And so at Elite, we always talk about like looking for red flag emotions. So frustration, fear, anger, these type of things, and start to understand and question yourself, just like, what's going on here that's making me feel this way?
Absolutely. Yes.
And I love this example that I use, but I'm stopped at a stoplight and someone is in a car in front of me and they're stopped. Light turns green, they don't go, I get mad, right? Something probably most of us have experienced at one point or another.
You're like, come on, get out of the way.
Right? And the surface level belief, like if we start looking at it and go, what makes me frustrated? You would say, the person in front of me isn't going fast enough, or they're not paying attention, they're on their phone, whatever, right? That's not the answer. The answer is always about ourselves and our own self-concept. Because ultimately, even if that guy took 5 seconds, which would be like an unbelievably long amount of time, right? It doesn't matter. Like your day would not change at all, right? But yet you would be so frustrated that probably you'd be angry for like, I know for me, I would be mad for like at least the next like 10 minutes about it, right? But it's like, what does that mean about me? And it could be, I'm unseen. And all of these beliefs, just so you know, all of these beliefs are illogical. So I'm going to say things now, you're going to be like, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't. But the point is your system, and you've learn to believe this through events that happened in your childhood, basically between when you were born and 7 years old, that make you believe this now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so it's like, I'm unseen, I'm powerless, I'm unloved, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, like stuff like that, where like you're not thinking, well, you know, likely you don't care if the person in front of you loves you or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like your mom or dad did something when you were 5, and that means that like not listening or not seeing you means that they don't love you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, the other side of it is that lens was you were 5 years old, so you may have misinterpreted the event that happened.
Absolutely.
So that's the other caveat.
Yep.
The one thing I do want to say, though, this goes beyond reframing. So a lot of folks, you'll go to therapy or you'll go to coaching, and they'll say like, well, your beliefs are logical, just reframe it and tell yourself you're illogical, right? That works for some things. The deep core self-concept things, it won't work for.
Mm-hmm.
So, right? And this is where we at Elite use internal family systems to really get into the pocket of these deeper moments and allow folks to sort of let these defense mechanisms go.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot about building trust with your internal system. And so for folks out there, internal family systems basically is a model where it says we have many parts. So you can think of it like the movie Inside Out, where there's a control panel in the girl's mind, and she has these little people that drive her in various moments. But there's basically defenders, there's hurt child parts, and then there's self, you.
Mm-hmm.
And the hurt child parts were these events that happened to you, and the defenders sit on top of those and protect you or protect those parts from being hurt again. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in that moment where you're stopped at a stoplight and the person doesn't go, your defender comes in and swoops in and says, you should honk your horn and yell at the guy and, maybe give him the finger as you drive by or something, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's protecting your hurt child part from like, I was unloved by my parents in this one specific moment that probably wasn't even true.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
that drives us when we're, 35, 40, and now we're managing, we have our big girl and big boy clothes on, and we're managing a team of 20 folks and $1 million budgets, and like, or even like, folks who are running countries out there, like they're driven by these hurt parts that have made them quote unquote successful, but they hurt a lot inside and they don't even know it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what comes up for me is oftentimes when you said something that really resonated in the sense that when it comes to hurt parts, we've never been given the tools to deal with them. And I don't mean deal with them and sweep them under the rug. I mean, sit with them and work with them to understand, to change, because that's really how we would change our beliefs, right? And so
Totally.
I read something in past if you were to Google the feelings wheel, in one article I read in past and experience it with many coaching clients, is that we've been told that any bad feelings, we have to just push them aside, right? So to your point, we armor up. We reach out for something for instant gratification, whatever our thing is, and we don't deal with it. When in actuality, those are just feelings identifying that our needs aren't being met. So as you were speaking about childhood experiences, those are when needs weren't being met. And unless you had parents that were psychologists or sociologists, etc., they would unknowingly be doing those things quite often, right? Especially if they have lower levels of emotional intelligence or self-awareness or have their own traumas that they're passing along, right? And so as an adult, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to look at our belief systems, but also through the lens of emotional intelligence. When we're talking about feelings, it's reinventing the script around that it's okay to talk about feelings in the workplace, because oftentimes we've been asked to separate ourselves, right? So there's Rob at work and then there's Rob at home, but Rob at work better not talk about his depression because it's not our responsibility, or we'll just refer them to the EAP program, right? The Family Assistance Program, right? When in actuality, we should be having things and people like third-party coaches like yourself, Rob, or even internally to our organization, or just having that trust and psychological safety to be like, hey, man, I'm not showing up as my best self. And then being able to have those people around us to help us unpack those emotions and understand that it's a signal that we need to figure out how to get to a place where the emotions are fitting our needs, and that it doesn't need to last a lifetime. It could last 6 seconds. Because neurologically speaking, that's often what happens is you have that feeling for 6 seconds and then it goes away. But it's because of our beliefs and our habit cycle that we keep bringing it up over and over again.
Yeah. And it's super common, right? Like I heard this a lot as an athlete, was just like stuff it down and just work harder. Right? And like almost everyone listening probably heard something similar to this. Like I hear it in different lenses from clients and even from like fellow coaches, right? Is like I hear the, you're a woman, be a strong woman, stuff it down, or be a man, stuff it down. Like no one was allowed to actually emote as children. I guess this was like the past, right? Is like, and it's like now we're grown up. And like I had to go to therapy and I was learning how to deal and process emotions at 32 years old. Like I was sitting in a, psychologist's office and I was crying and she was like, okay, you need to just like, not just like turn it off. Like, and it's again, this is a defender, a protector that steps in and says, turn it off.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
And it's just learning like basically a foundational skill that we should all learn, but because our parents didn't know it, because they never learned it from their parents. And then, so now it's like, we're all these adults that we don't know how to process emotions. And so we go, it's unsafe, keep it out of the workplace. And then, yes. And then the other side of it is like, well, if I don't know how to, like, and this is like, if you look at the emotional intelligence model, like that Daniel Goleman has,
absolutely.
If I don't know how to do my own, I can never help someone else do it with them.
No, because when you're thinking about it from a modeling perspective, half of our quotients in emotional intelligence have to do with our internal track and where we're at. And then the other half is from a social or an exterior perspective and how we're managing and reacting to others. And that circles back to your original points. Based on how we hurt is how we're going to react to others. And it's a cycle.
Yep.
And that's all it is when it's broken down. And when I say that's all it is, I'm not saying that, again, it's something that we should take away from, not at all. But what I'm saying is that there's an opportunity where we can have our learning edges, not just in the workplace. I don't think it should just be up to workplaces or your coaches. I think it should start a lot younger. And we're starting to see some things in sports and inter-school systems and such, but I think there's a long way to go in the sense that at the age of 32, it should be absolutely absurd to think that we don't understand our emotions, right?
Yeah, but so here's the thing, right? If folks are listening to this and it sounds crazy, like it's not your fault. First off,
very much so.
Second off, you can learn it. It's a skill, right? You can learn it just like you learned how to ride a bicycle or, learned leadership, right?
Definitely.
So it's not like this big and it's not this big thing it'll take you time, but every skill takes time to learn, right? So none of this is like this element of like Angie and I were born as like I said it. I didn't know how to do it.
Likewise.
And at 32 years, I'm sitting in an office and I'm doing like this like shoulder tapping and like bilateral stimulation and like we're throwing everything at it. And like my body was like so many times it just would shut it out. And it took work to like learn and be able to process it. Right. And there's moments where you'll feel safe. Like for me now, I use my dog as, my kind of safety thing. So like when I feel like I need to be sad or cry or whatever, I'll get him to come. I'll get a treat. And I actually taught him to lie on me.
Okay.
And so I'll hold him and he gives me that safety of like the most pure, unconditional love and acceptance you can imagine
Beautiful.
because he's a dog, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he comes and he'll lie there and he makes me feel safe enough to like let emotions out, right? And so you'll find and you'll be able to like cultivate your techniques that'll work for you.
Absolutely.
And it takes time and effort. But
Yeah.
the other side of this work is as you start to not only process feelings, it's also going to help you identify those belief systems that need to be updated. And it'll give you the resources to do that.
Yeah.
And then you can start having massive impact and choosing to do things that you never even imagined were possible. Like for me, doing a TED Talk or moving to Costa Rica or even getting married to my wife. Like I dated her for, I think it was 7 or 8 years. And I always was like afraid of commitment for some reason. Because I actually believe for me, one of my core problems was self-acceptance.
Okay.
And it was around like, I felt as a child like my dad never accepted me. But healing that made me go, I can accept myself. And therefore, I can actually get married to my wife because there's nothing that she'll see that goes, oh yeah, I should have never accepted this guy. Right? He's broken.
I hope not.
And so
Yes,
then
exactly.
you can actually do that. Right? But I didn't, for the first 7 years, I couldn't even like imagine that. There was no thought about like, I'm not self-accepting or, whatever. It was just like, I can't get married because I just feel like I can't do it or it freaks me out. And now it just was like, oh yeah, it's just right. It's like what I would, like, she's amazing. Why wouldn't I want to marry her?
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm hearing, Rob, is that by going inwards and doing self-discovery, working on beliefs, finding different modalities that work for you at different chapters throughout this journey, you were able to build on your emotional intelligence. It's not something that stays stagnant if you're working at it. And because of that, what I'm sensing is that there's a heck of a lot more joy in your life. You're a lot less stressed. Decision making for you is easier. Commitments are easier for you. And you have the ability to move some of those proverbial roadblocks to accomplish things both professionally and personally that you had inspired to.
Absolutely. Right. And so my wife and I, we love watching dating shows, like reality dating shows on TV.
Okay.
So like Love Island or, The Bachelor, like those kind of things. Right. And what you'll always inevitably see on the show, usually once or twice a season, is like two people hit it off and it gets real deep really quick. And they're like totally all in. And then like one of them will pull the ripcord on something that makes no sense. So like on Love Island once, it was like this couple was doing really well. And then the guy got his girlfriend or whatever you want to call it, the person he was dating, like a coffee in the morning, and he didn't put the right amount of cream or sugar or something. Like basically he got the order messed up, which is like very minor and like no one would, like
blink at that. No.
It's like it's a small thing, right?
Right.
She thought like she blew a gasket. She turned it into this whole thing. She like vetoed the relationship and like all of this stuff, right?
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
it's like, no, but it's the belief of like, I'm not good enough or I'm unlovable or I'm not acceptable or all these things. We don't know what that belief is, but ultimately some of that trauma led to her vetoing, basically ejecting from a really great relationship and a really great person because she internally feels some of these old beliefs that are coming in.
Yes. And there's no difference when you walk through those proverbial office doors, whether it be physical or virtual at this point. in our world, the same things can transpire. So for example, if you have a leader that has to micromanage or control, then oftentimes it's going to stem down to their belief system or their behaviors. If you have that leader that, kind of kicks it old school and it's the carrot or the stick, again, belief systems. Leaders that are showing up and it's a bit of perfectionism. So they're really hard on you to make sure that your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, and all of your commas are there. And you're using Webster's dictionary on a regular with apps in the background. Again, perfectionism breeds to belief systems. So what, Rob, I hear you saying is that, albeit from a quote unquote entertainment perspective, you can see those things in the shows, but you can also see them translate and in real life as well within our profession, and then hobbies and personal relationships too.
Absolutely. Right. And here's the other side of it too, right? So we're talking about it from our bosses, right? So often folks who are micromanagers or perfectionists or hyperachievers or whatever, they have the I'm not good enough or, I'm not worthy, those kind of things. And they judge themselves more harshly than they judge you.
Yeah, absolutely.
However,
agreed.
For folks out there, right? Maybe let's not look at our boss, let's look at you, right? And it's like, have you ever felt anxiety when you were looking at a job posting going like, this is my dream job, but, I only check 5 out of the 10 boxes. Maybe I won't apply, right? That's because you believe that, one of these things is running in the background going, well, if I prevent Rob from applying, I'll prevent the pain when he's ultimately rejected.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's going to prevent you even in things that you may not even have noticed, right? Like you looked at the posting, you kind of like, I'd really like to do that. And then you just don't do it. Right. Or like, we're in coaching circles, right? So everyone wants to write a book, right? And everyone goes like, I'm going to write a book. And like not many people write books. And it's often that, right? And the distractions that we take are just part of our defense saying like, well, if you wrote a book and you launched it, people are going to judge you. They're going to find out the truth. Right? The other side of it is like, if you're a leader, it's like how you come across to your team. So when I was standing on the TED stage, I wasn't trying to show people how smart I was. I wasn't trying to show people that I'm the greatest guy in the world and you should love me or you should accept me, because ultimately that's my real pain point is like, you have to accept me. It's like, this is the best I've got. This is my journey. This is the research that I've learned. And here are the tools that I can give you in this moment that I think will help you. And that's the difference. It's not this like forceful push. It's like, here I am. And ultimately people gravitate to that type of leader.
Very much so. And so when you're speaking at this from a sports perspective or a leadership perspective, what would you say to me in the sense of starting points? Like where do you start with all this stuff?
Yeah. we always start with basically what I mentioned before, which is the red flag emotions. So we have folks who we ask them to track their emotion. Like there's apps that you can do this for free, or you can use a journal, like a paper journal, and write it down if you want. But it's really starting to identify these moments throughout your day where you're feeling stress, fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, stuff like that, right? Sadness. And then starting to kind of unpack them a bit to start understanding like, what are the commonalities that are going on, right? And if it's like your boss yells at you and, you're feeling like, denigrated in some way, or however that comes across in your experience, or even stuff like, you want to speak at, like I have a client who's going to go speak at South by Southwest, right? But it's like, they have to apply to go speak there. But if you're looking at that application form going, I don't know if I'm good enough, or I don't know what I'm going to talk about, or whatever. It's like, what's the belief about you that's preventing you from shooting your shot? Like, I'm not saying like, it's guaranteed that they're going to make it, but
No.
it's guaranteed you won't make it if you don't apply.
Hearing you, Rob, in the sense that it helps move past blockers so that minimally you can apply using that same example versus shying or shrinking away from it based on old beliefs that probably aren't true at this point in time.
Yeah. And like, I always use this example of baseball, right? Is like the greatest baseball players ever, like Hall of Famers, would dream of having like hitting the ball 40% of the time. Right? And so this is like those 95% of decisions you make on a day-to-day basis that you don't even realize you're making. Here's a good example for this is like, have you ever driven a car to work and then you got there and you're like, how did I get here?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
That's your subconscious brain going, I'm doing stuff, right? So that stuff, if you can change your beliefs and program yourself to believe like, I'm good enough, I'm accepted, all these self-supportive things, those decisions that you're making will align towards the things you want and the impact you want to have, the legacy you want to leave, the person you want to become. And that'll give you more swings at bat. And then that 40% or 30% or whatever that at bat is going to be, you're going to get like thousands more attempts where you won't even realize. You'll apply for that job because it's just who you are. That's where you want to go. You'll ask your boss for a promotion or a raise because you delivered work and you think that this is what you're expected to get. Right? You'll switch jobs when you have a bad boss because, or you'll manage them saying like, this behavior is unacceptable because that's who you are and you value yourself. And it will change your life. And I can say that because it's changed mine.
Well put, Rob. Well put. So if we were looking to connect with you in future, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is the best place for me, Rob Kalwarowsky on LinkedIn. You can also head on over to elitehighperformance.com. We have our leadership programs there, one-on-one coaching. So if you want to get one-on-one coaching from me, you can book a free consult with me. I'll just tell you right now, I have 5 spots left. So it's going to be real. You have to get real quick on the website. So shoot me an email. You can shoot me an email to Rob at Elite High Performance. So if you want to get in the queue for one-on-ones or you want to bring us in to do leadership coaching with your team, we have some leadership programs for different levels of folks, but you can shoot me an email, Rob at Elite High Performance. And the last thing, I want to give folks something. So I have a free ebook on how to deal with a bad boss. So if you have a bad boss, which 65% of you do, go to howtodealwithboss.com and you can get a free ebook there. You can also, if you really have one and you want to start getting into like the mindset and stuff around it, I have a $50 gift. So if you put in the promo code happiness at work, you can get the promo code, sorry. You'll get $50 off the How to Deal with a Bad Boss program. But also for folks who want to start diving into their own self-awareness, if you shoot me an email, Rob at Elite High Performance, I have a 3.5 minute visualization exercise. I'll send it to you because I don't know how else I can give it to you, but it's a meditation and it'll help you get started on your self-awareness journey. So yeah.
So many guests.
Hopefully that's a lot. But,
that's fantastic.
But I want to give folks value. So
I hear you, Rob. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Angie. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.